Welcome to International Geneva. For a couple of days this March, young students and changemakers from all over the world have taken over the Palais des Nations, the United Nations headquarters here in Geneva. What's going on here? Well, the Geneva International Model United Nations Annual Conference is what's happening. Created in 1999, it's a non-governmental organization run entirely by students, and it has a consultative status with the Economic and Social Council of the United Nations. The GIMUN is a simulation exercise of the United Nations lasting for several days. Delegates engage in negotiation processes which mirror how topics are discussed during real UN meetings and how the Sustainable Development Goals can be reached. What's on top of the agenda for these young people? Well, it's climate change. Pauline, thank you so much for joining us. First of all, how do young delegates like you and the Secretary General here want to reform the United Nations?
So in general, I think it's kind of a general opinion when you learn international relations and when you learn about the UN, is that the biggest thing that we have to reform at the United Nations would be the United Nations Security Council. I think we all agree that without a reform of the Security Council, we won't go further. I mean, they have the power, they've got the veto power for the big conflicts that are going on at the moment around the world. It's like a major problem because in countries like the P5 members, they're taking the decision of if they say no at the Security Council, then nothing happens. So, I mean, the biggest thing we have to change is this, how the Security Council works with the veto power. But I think it's going to be very challenging because in order for the reform of the Security Council, it has to pass the Security Council itself, the vote of the Security Council and the veto as well. So I guess it's going to be challenging in the past year, I mean not the past years but in the next few years.
Part of the reform of the UN and the whole agenda is also climate change. Now, how important is this at the GIMUN this year, and what do you think that young students can do with this topic?
So this year we've decided at GIMUN to have this committee called UNEP. It's United Nations Environment Programme. We thought that it would be important to have an environmental committee this year because as we've seen in medias, in the press, everywhere, environment has become, I mean, it's a global problem in the daily lives. I mean, every day in the news you can see news about climate change, what this president said about climate change, natural disasters. It's everywhere in the news. Now we've seen some youth strikes for environment, which is an amazing thing because, you know, as you said, the youth has a key role in the next generation to move things forward, to have to do something about this problem. And this year we decided to have this environmental committee to put these problems forward, and it's very important for us these topics. And
what are some of the real issues at heart here, and how do you yourself personally want to get involved?
You mean at the United Nations?
Yes, and especially when it comes to climate change and the Sustainable Development Goals there.
So with the new agenda, with the SDGs, the 17 SDGs, yes, we've seen that the environment is at the forefront of the program, and I mean the environmental issues are, I mean, they're linked to all the other SDGs as well. And if we don't do anything about this, I mean, it will impact our future. If we don't act now, what will happen next? I mean, it's us, the future generation, who's going to live all the natural disasters, what's going to happen next to the planet. So I think it's time that we do something about it and that we talk about this. And the United Nations, there are more and more conferences about the environment. We see that UN agencies are trying to also work on climate change or environmental issues, for example. Some are trying to reduce the paper or the conference documents, for example, because you could see that there are so many documents printed for one conference. So,
but do young people like you, Pauline, think that the United Nations is still powerful enough when it comes to combating global warming?
I think for global warming, climate change, I think that the United Nations has some power because it can impact governments. But as we've seen the medias, it's very hard as well because you've got state sovereignty, and unfortunately, if some countries don't want to change their policy on the environment, on global warming, it won't happen. But I think the United Nations can play a key role in having an awareness program for governments to have this issue really on the table. And with the COP21, for example, and all the COP conferences that they have now all the time, it's I think it's now governments are taking into account that it's a major problem.
Young people here at the GIMUN, they come from all over the world. How important is Geneva for them? What do you think?
So I think they see Geneva as the diplomatic, the international relations center like New York, because you've got all these UN agencies or the United Nations office in Geneva, and they see it like for them. I've talked with them. They're so amazed by these cities, and being in the United Nations for them, it's a great opportunity to be inside the building and see what's happening in there, because during the week they've got this chance to meet. I mean, to come across other diplomats, and this is a very great experience, even though it's kind of hard for students, for delegates who come to the conference, because Geneva is this very expensive city, and so it's kind of hard for them to come to Geneva. But other than that, they see it's like a dream come true for these kids. I mean, for not these kids, but these students to come to Geneva, because most of them are studying international relations, and they know Geneva is the center of international relations, and they want to be diplomats someday, work for NGOs or international organizations. So being inside and see the building, and just for them, it's an amazing opportunity.
Talking about millennial diplomacy, do you think that the young leaders here, they really still want to become diplomats?
I do think a lot of them will play a key role someday. Maybe not as diplomats, maybe as people in governments. A lot of people. I mean, I would like to be a diplomat someday as well. So this experience, it shows you how it works. It helps you with the public speaking skills, and also to see all these issues at the United Nations, to discuss, to have the chance to meet other people from different cultures as well. But I do think a lot of them want to become diplomats as well, because when you enter the model United Nations world, you don't want to come out of this world, and being a diplomat, yeah, it can help them stay in that kind of club of diplomats.
So one day, Pauline, when you yourself become a diplomat, how important will climate change be, and how are you planning to push the climate change envelope?
If I have to speak on behalf of my country, which is France, France is currently putting the climate change, global warming at the forefront of their policy, which is kind of nice, because I think it is important. It's going to be a major problem for the next years. I mean, for next generation, because I mean, what's going to happen is that we're going to have more and more climate migrants, climate refugees, who are going to leave their countries, and we have to take care of them, because at the moment there's no definition for climate refugees. There's no law to protect them, nothing that is really defined for them, to a legal framework for the climate refugees. If we could call them refugees, we don't know. Is it migrants? Is it refugees? It's a big topic currently at the United Nations between UNHCR and the International Organization for Migration, for example. And I do think that governments should really involve in that topic, because it's very, very important. And as Greta Thunberg said, you know, we have to act now, because we need these young people, we need young generations to have these strikes and to talk about this more and more often, because I do think some governments do not realize how important it is nowadays.
And we need young people like you, Pauline. Thank you so much for your time, and all the best for your future and the fight against global warming.
Thank you.
Many of the young people here represent the Committee of the United Nations Environment Programme, and many of them want to become future climate diplomats, to be at the forefront of the fight against global warming. Isabel, so you are part of the UNEP committee. What kind of resolutions have been adopted when it comes to climate change issues?
Okay, well, the first thing, or the most important thing that we can discover, is the important role of the companies that they have in our environment. Because if we want to make or find a solution to the climate change, we need to find the problem. So for us, it's really important the role of the agriculture companies in to have a better way to treat the waste of the companies, even the waste of the urban people, the people that lives in the cities.
And what do you want to do in the future, Isabel? You came all the way from Colombia. Do you want to become a future climate diplomat as well?
Yes, absolutely. I really would like to work in the environment program here, if it's possible, because if I can to apport to the change of the world, for me it's really amazing. And if you can do something important to fix something that we are destroyed, it's really, I can't describe the word.
And how important do you think is Geneva as a place for the global climate change debate?
It's very important. I think that it's the city of the diplomacy. So they have a really big role in all our learning, in all our training. So I think that if you have the opportunity, you have to apply it and you have to try it. Because if you learn every day, that is the most important. When you learn every day, you can find the solutions to light the world, save the world.
You're also one of the young students taking part here in the discussions at GIMUN. How important was the climate change topic at this year's GIMUN here?
So yes, I participated in GIMUN. I flew from India. Our committee ECOSOC discussed implementation of SDGs, and I was representing Kingdom of Morocco. We talked about the importance of Goal 17, that is partnerships for implementation of goals. So in that we compared it with Goal 13, that is climate action. And in my personal capacity, I said that we need to act right now, as there is no planet B. We need to act right now, and we need to leave no one behind. That's what.
How impactful are debates like these here when it comes to the real world? Because at the end of the day, this is only an exercise.
Yeah, indeed it is merely an exercise, but it's not restricted to it. It is an epitome, it is an inspiration for all of us taking part here who will go back to their own countries and then tell people. And the most important thing is that a first step is an important thing to the 1,000-mile journey. So you need to act, all those minor steps are very important to curb climate change and act further to save our only planet Earth.
We have seen so many climate protests and youth activism all over the world, protests and strikes. How are you, when you go home to India, planning to change the climate change debate?
Yes. So currently we are working in our college, we are working as a group related to the environmental law of India. We are working up the law aspect as I'm a law student, and moreover we also are planning to take minor steps of awareness to moreover fulfill the SDG 13 of climate change.
What are some of the biggest issues now in India when it comes to the environmental law?
As the matter of fact of environmental law, except the Supreme Court, we have the National Green Tribunal. So it is passing various judgments regarding closing and opening of various big industries which are polluting. So it is a very important factor, as they are leading to direct pollution. And as you all know, that New Delhi is the most polluted city in the world. So we need to act right now.
How is Geneva and events like the GIMUN here going to help you in terms of network, and how do you see Geneva as a city, as a global hub to fight climate change?
So the biggest thing about Geneva is not only does it have the UN office at Geneva, but it has the most important SDG lab. So the head of the SDG lab came in our committee and she talked one-on-one with us about the working of SDG lab. So Geneva, with the help of the UN offices, the NGOs, the SDG labs, the country representatives, it is a world hub, as in all the minds, all the stakeholders are here and they debate, discuss, and then that is the hub, where a stage of meeting of minds for further action.
What is your dream and your plan for the future? Do you want to become a climate change diplomat and fight global warming?
It might be one of the choices. Being a law student, I'm planning to work further with respect to international law aspect, or maybe with the United Nations, but obviously climate change is one of the strong things that I would like to impose, not only in my personal capacity in my daily lives, but also of changing and saving our only planet Earth.